And good morning, everyone. Welcome to After Further Review. We are back from the bye week as the Browns are back, and we are ready to talk about a 10-7 victory by the Browns over the Houston Texans on Sunday. I'm Dave DiNatale. Jay Crawford is with me, and Jay, it wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty, but it's a win. It's a win, and I felt like maybe the Browns learned a few lessons from that Raiders game a couple weeks ago in the bad conditions, and were able to just kind of overcome and do what they had to do to beat Houston yesterday.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that headline, by the way, it wasn't pretty, but it's a win. You could use that for just about any one of our victories this year. That's kind of the way it's gone. So, 6-3 though, Dino, is where you'd want to be. If you would have looked at our schedule at the beginning of the season and you start assigning wins and losses, I know that's always a dicey proposition. I think most people would have had us at 5-4 or 6-3. So it's been great that we've held serve, but someplace in the future, in this next 7 games, we're going to have to find a way to get a win in a game that we're not supposed to, because it's really a tale of 2 seasons remaining. 4 games left against the Giants, Jets, Eagles, and Jags. Those 4 teams have a combined 6 wins. It's not pretty. Okay, so you then look at the 3 games left on the schedule that we're not supposed to win. That's the Ravens, the Steelers, and the Titans, and they have a combined 21 wins. So you're not going to get in this year, I don't think, at 10-6. I really think this could be the year, even though we've got the extra wild card. It's just so jammed up there, with what's going on with the Dolphins and the Raiders. Now, granted, these teams are going to lose some too, but I think 11-5 punches your ticket. I think 10-6, you really have to hold your breath.
It's all of a sudden, it's like 2007 all over again. Where that team, as many offensive records as they may have broken, and they finished 10-6.
Yeah.
It was one of those quirky years when it wasn't enough to get you in. And the other thing, Jay, that I think concerns me is that, those 4 games you mentioned that the Browns will be favored and they're winnable and they should win. In a crazy season, you can always stub your toe. And that's what unfortunately worries me. You have a bad game. You have a turnover fest. Conditions aren't right. I mean, your margin for error right now is very, very low.
Yeah, we saw the Jets, what they did on Monday night against the Patriots, I believe. They had that game in the win column, and they let it slip away. Same with the Giants and Eagles, Jags as well. I mean, these aren't world beaters for sure. You can look at their records, and at this point in the season, you are what your record says you are. But you're right. I mean, you have such a slim, razor-thin margin of error from here on out. You absolutely have to punch those 4 games in the win column to get you to 10. And I don't think it's going to be the Ravens or the Steelers. I think it's all going to come down to that Titans game, which, they've looked human lately. Derrick Henry is a battering ram. We know that. We know that Tannehill can be just crafty enough to beat anybody. So, I know it's dangerous to do and start, parsing out wins and losses as you glance at the schedule. But Dino, I just don't see it really coming out any other way. You've got to hold serve in the 4 easy games, and you're going to have to win one of those 3. Now, the Steelers game is really interesting, Dino, because it's going to be a hotly contested game. It always is. And I'm wondering at that point if they've been dinged or not. I thought the Ravens had the best opportunity on the remaining schedule to beat the Steelers. The Ravens looked, and I know the weather last night was atrocious, but the Ravens don't look like the Ravens even of last year. So, gosh, if the Ravens don't beat the Steelers, then I don't think they rest their starters for the final game of the season, because perfection is on the line.
Right.
So that might really that we might want to watch that Ravens-Steelers game with a very sharp eye, because if the Ravens happen to ding the Steelers and they come into Cleveland 14-1, why would you risk putting your starters out there? History's not on the line. Undefeated season isn't on the line. You may rest everybody, and that might actually be the Browns' best chance to get into the playoffs. I know a lot of scenarios, if, before we get to that point, but it might be something to watch with curiosity as the season unfolds.
Back to yesterday for a second as we look at that win over the Texans. Boy, everybody had said when Nick Chubb got hurt, well, yeah, it stinks because Chubb is so good, but we've got Kareem Hunt.
Yeah.
The difference between having one and having both is pretty staggering, because we saw it in the fourth quarter again. Because of the way they use Hunt and Chubb, Hunt has a ton of energy in the fourth quarter while other teams get tired. And then, we'll put Chubb back in on a toss sweep, and he ends up, essentially taking it for a touchdown, but obviously smartly going out of bounds and helping the Browns to run out the clock. But you saw again the pathway to the Browns winning games this year with those double backs.
Listen, it's long been one of the mysteries to me in the NFL why more teams don't try to find that quality second back. And last night or yesterday was a perfect example of why it works. If you think back to when the Browns had Mack and Biner, there were two different style of runners, but the key was, here's what I equate it to. You've got two cars in the driveway, and you drive a lot on both. You can either have those cars hit max miles in 4 years, or you can alternate those cars and let them hit max miles in 8 years. Why wouldn't you do it that way? But Dino, stunningly to me, and I've wondered about this, and I had many conversations with a lot of our analysts at ESPN about this thought, and they all agree, but they can't tell me why more teams don't do it. I remember I asked Jaws one time, who's a brilliant personnel guy. I said, Jaws, why aren't more teams employing this 1-2 punch at running back? And he said, I don't know. On paper, it's a great theory, Jay, but teams are afraid to invest in it. The Browns are all in on it.
Right.
And we saw in the micro yesterday how it pays dividends. So it's like a boxing match, Dino. You're working the body for 12 rounds, one body blow after another. None of them are staggering. None of them knock the fighter off of his feet. But in the last 3 rounds where heavyweight fights are won, and in the fourth quarter where NFL games are won, those body blows take their toll and they start to wear the fighter down. And then the legs get weak. And then it just takes one punch to the head to blow the fuse to the legs, and the fighter's on his back. And that's exactly what we saw yesterday. The Browns gave a nice steady dose of Hunt, Chubb. And then in the fourth, they were alternating drives. You saw a big dose of Chubb. They go down the field. They score the touchdown. Then they come back with Hunt. And Hunt is a different kind of runner.
Yes.
Chubb is, I think, a little more patient, but he's got great power and speed. We saw that yesterday. But when Hunt gets the ball, he hits the hole immediately. I thought Matt Millen did a great job yesterday during the game pointing out the difference between the two. Hunt is a get it and go guy. Chubb is a get it and let his feet churn for a minute and let him see. On the touchdown run, you saw all the flow was going to the right.
Right.
That was where the play was supposed to go. But Chubb instinctively knew, if I wait, if there's nothing there, I might have a cutback lane. And he did. And he hit it, and that's where that speed comes in. And by the way, you talk about the play where he runs out of bounds. If you want to put one play in a time capsule and describe who and what Nick Chubb is and what he means to this football team, that's the play. Because he was told ahead of time, the command is get the first down, go down.
No mas. Yep.
That's it. Now, in that moment, we've seen players just sort of phase out, not sure what to do. We saw Todd Gurley a couple of weeks ago try his best to not go in. He goes in, Atlanta has to kick off. They lose that football game. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot had to happen. The Browns would have had to likely given up a kickoff return for a touchdown and then not recover an onside kick and then give up a couple of miracle plays. But I flipped over after the Browns and watched the finish to the Arizona game. Unbelievable.
Right.
I mean, literally, you thought that the Bills had just defeated the Cardinals. Even the cutaway shots, the Bills were celebrating and the Cardinals were another tough loss. And all of a sudden, and I said watching the game, wow, I'm surprised that the Cardinals have such long faces. Give me Kyler Murray in 45 seconds any day.
Right.
Now, they could try to execute that Hail Mary pass at the end of the game 100 times, and they might make it work 3 or 4. The fact that Kyler Murray was able to throw that ball against his body, going out of bounds 55 yards on the dot, and Hopkins is able to go up, high point it, and pull it down, that's unthinkable. But stuff like that happens. So Chubb wisely going out of bounds, and by the way, it would have been better for him just to fall at the one.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm not going to fault him for that though, man, because it was just a thing of beauty. And it really exemplifies, I think. And you know what? I don't think he would have even needed been told to do that in that situation. No. He's smart enough to know. But, it just shows the selflessness of this guy. Backs are judged on 2 things. You know this: yardage and touchdowns.
Right.
And that's a phantom touchdown that will never exist in the stat sheet. But in Nick's mind, he knows he has it. In the fans' mind, it was better than a touchdown. And now the gamblers don't feel that way.
No.
Because he cost a lot of people a lot of money yesterday. But I'll take it any day of the week. It was a brilliant play, and it really drives home who this guy is.
Yeah. Another kind of perspective, a guy I respect, Ken Carman from 92.3 The Fan, tweeted out yesterday that, when we watch the Browns, we are watching perhaps the most talented defensive player in the history of the franchise in Myles Garrett.
No doubt. I would
sit there
agree with that.
Yeah, I sat there and I'm like, yeah, I think I have to agree, because most of the Browns Hall of Famers are offensive players. Jim Brown, Otto Graham, Dante Lavelli, Marion Motley,
sure,
et cetera, Ozzie Newsome, et cetera, et cetera.
We've had some great defensive players.
Correct.
But we haven't at any one time, in my view, I don't think we've ever had the game's most dominant and disruptive defensive player. And I mentioned that to you after week 4.
Yeah.
I said, I think we're looking at the most disruptive, dominant defender in the history of the Cleveland Browns. And at least in my lifetime, I've never seen anybody with that kind of a go and gear. And yeah, I would definitely agree with Carmen. I've been saying that all year. I think that this guy is, boy, here's my hope, Dino. We had one of the most dominant linemen in the NFL for more than a decade. Arguably one of the best, if not the best. I think he's the best offensive lineman we ever had. And he never got to see a playoff game.
Right.
Because we didn't put the pieces around him that we needed to get him there. Yesterday, as I was watching our vastly improving defense, I started asking myself, this isn't going to happen to Myles Garrett too, is it? I know we've got Denzel Ward. I think Mack is really starting to be a shining light in that linebacking core. Taki shows flashes of brilliance, but I still don't know that he's a hit or a miss in the draft. But it is imperative in this next offseason between draft and free agency, and maybe even trade, that we get 3 substantial pieces to add to the defense. Because I told you a couple of weeks ago when Tony Dungy said, you've got to have, to win a Super Bowl with that all-time great defense, you need a Hall of Fame caliber player in the back.
Yes.
You need a Hall of Fame caliber player in the middle, and you need a Hall of Fame caliber player in the front. Maybe 2 up front. And right now we've got one of those pieces. What Denzel Ward is long-term, I don't know. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to continue to play at this level. But we need to add the pieces around him. But Dino, Our first 7 games, our opponents averaged 31.5 points against us. We were terrible on defense.
Right.
Over the last 2 games, against some pretty good quarterbacks. Now, granted, the Texans are not the offense that they were last year without Hopkins, and Johnson was dinged, so he didn't get to play. But, they've got a quarterback that can beat you. And the Raiders have a quarterback that can beat you. Now, terrible conditions in both games, horrible wind, bad to throw. But the Browns have held 2 okay offenses to a total of 23 points over the last 2 games. So we're going in the right direction. We're going the right way. I don't think this is going to be an all-star caliber defense. I don't think we're going to even finish in the top half of the league in defense. But we're going to, 2 things travel in the NFL, particularly in cold weather: defense and running game. And the running game we've got. I think the defense is getting a lot better, Dino. I do.
I felt that way. It's funny. When the Browns played the Steelers, I felt that way, even though they obviously ended up being a lopsided score. I mean, I remember sitting there going, Browns defense standing toe to toe. I mean, it was the offense, it was the pick six and things like that put the Browns, behind the 8 ball early in the game. But yeah, I would agree with Jay. I think defensively they're getting better. Garrett, I think, is making everyone on that defensive line better. I mean, no Vernon played well a couple weeks ago. I thought Ogunjobi had another good game yesterday. I mean, he's raising the performance level of those around him. Another sign of a star.
Well, he's able to do that because if you don't double team him and slide help on the offensive line to try to stop him, he's going to get home. That's what he does. So you beat him with double teams. That's why one top 5 defensive lineman is so imperative in today's game. I've had people tell me the most important position in any pro sport is quarterback in the game of football. But I've had a lot of people argue that the second most important position in pro football is a defensive lineman that can counteract and disrupt that quarterback force.
Right.
And so when he's coming off the edge and you've got to slide a guard over, you got to add a tight end there to chip him and to keep him from getting home. That's why Ogunjobi and Richardson and some of these other players are able to take advantage of one-on-ones, find that gap, split it, and get home. So, I just think he makes everybody on that defensive front better. And also, by the way, I remember Rondé Barber telling me, I asked him, how much do you love having Warren Sapp on the front? And he said, it's the difference from me having to cover for 4 seconds or 2.5 seconds. So think about that. You're chasing a ghost that you don't know where he's going to go. Do you want to chase him for 4 seconds or 5 seconds? Or do you want to chase him for 2.5 seconds? And Rondé said, he makes me look a lot better than I am at times because he's forcing the quarterback to get rid of it early. And you all know what happens when that happens. It's either an incompletion or an interception. It rarely ends good for the offense. So Myles Garrett, to me, is the most important player in this franchise. Nick Chubb is a very close second. In my column today for WKYC.com on our app, I talked about the fact that Nick Chubb and Myles Garrett, in a very short period of time, Myles Garrett is 4th on the team in all-time sacks. 4th.
Crazy.
That's unbelievable. The guy's been here. This is his 4th season.
4th year. Yep.
And it hasn't been 4 full seasons, of course.
Correct.
Chubb is now in the top 10 in Cleveland Browns running backs all time, and he's barely halfway, not even in total of games. He hasn't even played 2.5 full seasons. And he's top 10 in rushing yards for a franchise that is built on running backs.
Right.
For crying out loud, we've got the greatest ever to do it in Jim Brown. Leroy Kelly is underrated for what he was able to do, especially filling the shoes of Jim Brown. I asked Jim Brown in an interview last year, the one back that you looked at with envy. And he told me without batting an eyelash, and I said that includes current players, Leroy Kelly.
Isn't that crazy? That's
so.
amazing.
I mean, this franchise is built on the backs of great running backs, and the guys played less than 2.5 full seasons, and he's currently 10th in rushing. And at this pace, he'll be top 5 by the end of the year or maybe into next year. And who knows where he finishes? Who knows? Jim Brown, although a great running back, we know played when they only had 14 games and he only had a 9-year career. So
Right.
those numbers are gettable if Chubb can stay healthy.
Sky is the limit. Jay, we got to run. Thank you, my friend. This was fun. I
Always
like Victory
good.
Monday. Victory Monday after further reviews are always my favorite, my friend. We'll see
love
you at
it, yeah.
5 on What's New, and we'll talk to you next week as well.
Talk to you soon.